with our enthusiasm. So I'll hand you over to Stephen, and I'm sure we're going to have a fascinating session.
Good, well, I hope so too. Good morning, everybody. Good to be here. So yeah, I hope it's going to be a fascinating session. It is going to involve you in participating, but participating individually and privately, as it were. So there isn't any group work, there isn't any role play. So everybody can relax. Okay? You can be in your box and protected around you as you will, but you do need to participate and engage to get the most out of it. Okay? So I'm going to kick off with 3 questions. It's about answering the question to yourself. It's not about sharing. We're not clearing or anything like that. Just 3 questions. Is the organisation you work for problem focused or solution focused? And if it's a question of, well, a bit of both, where's the balance? What's it like? Is it problems focused or is it solution focused? So that'll be question number 1. Question number 2 is, how do you know? And question number 3 is, does it matter? Okay, so I'll just leave you with those, and we'll return to them at the end, or rather you'll return to them at the end. But what that also does is to sort of set the tone for this morning, which is I'm going to be doing quite a bit of that, asking you questions, getting you to answer them yourself. You might be even thought of coaching. Who knows? Okay, so as presented, as advertised, this session's called Solution Focused Coaching. In reality, it's going to be Solution Focused Coaching and Mentoring. Okay. And that immediately sets us off down the trail of, so what's the difference between coaching and mentoring? Is my view about that the same as everybody else's view about that? And that's what it's supposed to do. And we will get a sense of some of these conceptual distinctions and practical applications of those distinctions that may challenge you significantly during the course of the morning. Okay? The slides you will get emailed, Julie, I'm sure of that. People will get everything that's on there, you'll get emailed to you. There is that for you, which we will use during the course of this hour and a half. Some of the frameworks in there. Okay? I was going to say, has everybody got one? Because obviously it's plenty more. Okay, actually at this point you might look at that. I've forgotten this slide. What I put at the top there is a framework I use quite frequently in presentations of workshops and trainings, which is not a requirement, but it's quite useful way of actually thinking, so what? Because the invitation is to say, during the course of what happens during this hour and a half, what awarenesses are being raised in you, what are you becoming aware of? It might be something about your organisation, it might be something about you, it might be new knowledge, new understanding, new insight. And then going across, so what actions are you going to take as a result of it? Because actually if it's only about awarenesses, then you leave the room and okay, you're a bit more aware that the world doesn't change. What awareness leading to what action, with a view to what impact, with a view to what benefit for anybody else or yourself. Yeah, so it's just a discipline in terms of taking what is being offered to you, and this morning what's being offered to you is what I've got in terms of presentations, some activities. What is that leading for you in terms of increased awareness, and therefore what actions are going to happen? It might be, I'm going to think a lot more about this over the summer, that nonetheless an action, with what impact that I think there might be some further actions that we could take in our organisation. Who knows? That's for you to use, should you wish to use it. But it is quite a useful mechanism. Okay, something about me in the context of coaching and what I'm here to talk about this morning. I'm a trainer. I do training, and increasingly I'm limiting the amount of leadership training I do, and most of the training is to do with coaching and mentoring. I'm a consultant. and work with organisations, helping them to embed a deeper sort of coaching culture in their organisation. I'm a facilitator, I'm a coach. I do coaching every week. I've got a coaching client this afternoon and I've got two tomorrow. My coaching work, a lot of it's done pro bono as a volunteer for a couple of charities I work for, with difficult, potentially quite difficult cases. I'm a mentor. And I'm also a counsellor. I actually do counselling. I'm actually trained as a counsellor as well. And that's quite interesting because what I'm going to show you next is a lot of these things overlap considerably. Yeah. Work freelance, and I've just started to do something in the latter stages of my career, which I would say is, makes me a bit of a social entrepreneur. And I'm going to talk about that right at the end. That's how I'm going to end, because I think we'll see how things come together. So that's something about me. This is what we're going to do this morning. We're going to have a look at some concepts. And I've already prefigured that by saying coaching, mentoring, what is the difference, all of that. Going to be doing something on solution-focused coaching in theory. What is it? Then we're going to park that for a minute and we're going to talk about learning or think about learning, because actually whether we're talking coaching, mentoring, facilitating, training, counselling, fundamentally it's about learning. So we're just going to visit that in a way that you may not have visited that before and link it to coaching. Then we're going to do solution-focused coaching in action, because I'm going to apply solution-focused. I'm going to coach everybody in this room using that technique. Okay? Because then you will have experienced it rather than just heard about it. Yeah? So, just as I asked 3 questions at the beginning of the morning, I'll be asking lots of questions and you'll be doing things and you will experience the process of solution-focused coaching. Okay? So, I thought at the time it might be a Guinness Book of Records thing, having coaching 60 people in the room at the same time. Maybe it even will with 20, who knows. Then something about solution-focused coaching in application, and then a wrap-up at the end. Okay, so that's the shape of the time we've got together, with the big bulk of that time being in solution-focused coaching in action. Okay, and that's the bit where you need to participate, but nobody will know whether you're actually participating or not, because it's all what you're doing in your head. Yeah. And so when inevitably the coaching in action will start in terms of a particular challenge or issue that you're wrestling with at the moment, you can afford to be go where you want to go, because there's no sense of you sharing it with anybody. Okay? So the more authentic you make it and the more substantial you make it, the more you'll understand the process. Yeah? Okay? If it's I can't get my teenage children out of bed in the morning, okay, you'll go through the process. If it's a bit deeper than that, you'll understand it more. Okay, is that all right? So you've got a shape for the day. Okay, the day, the morning. Okay, just a little look at that. I've chosen those 4 just to illustrate the point that in my experience in what I do, all of that is interchangeable. So I'm going to illustrate that with somebody I'm working with who comes to me because she comes to for counselling in relation to anxiety. In reality, I am doing all of those things. Yeah? There are some aspects of what I'm doing which fit sort of in the counselling camp, but alongside that I'm doing some coaching, because we want to try and help her to get better at dealing herself and managing herself with the feelings and physical symptoms that she's got. I'm also doing some tutoring, because she's a very intelligent woman, and I made the judgment if we just talk a little bit about the brain and how it works and the hormonal responses that cause these sort of things to happen, that might be helpful. That's tutoring. Yeah? And actually there's a bit of mentoring, because I in the past have had bits of anxiety, as we all have, and said, well, in my experience, which I wouldn't do if it was broadly counselling, and I certainly wouldn't do if it was coaching. See what I mean? So actually, some of these concepts that you can buy books about coaching, mentoring, tutoring and counselling, which would suggest they're very separate. In reality, when you deal with real people in front of you, and you're sure you know this, you're moving interactively around these areas. Yeah? And what I'm going to show you in a minute is how coaching and mentoring, we can think about those as actually maybe rather differently to how you thought about them before. My view and my work in relation to that is it's about intention. Okay? So the intention is to help others to perform better and be more effective, and or to live the lives they want to live. Yeah, free from stress, free from anxiety, better relationship with others. Yeah? So what I do and what I draw upon in terms of resource, going back to the previous slide, might come under a camp that some people say, oh no, that's not coaching, that's mentoring. Others would say, no, that's not counselling, that's tutoring. Does it matter? Providing professionally we've got a sense of where we're going, what the person in front of you, what matters to them, is that you're giving some help. Yeah? Right, I don't know whether anybody's seen this before or thought of things in this way before. This is what I want you to take on board, perhaps even just for the morning, and think about it maybe, which is coaching can either be directive or non-directive. Another term for directive coaching is mentoring. So in directive coaching, we're actually telling somebody what they need to do, what seems the right thing to do. You're helping to solve their problem from a position of you having had more experience, having been there yourself. So you are what some people would call mentoring. Yeah, I would call it mentoring, but on this scheme it's directive coaching. Yeah? All the way along to non-directive coaching, which is what those of you who've been trained in coaching will recognise. Yeah? But the beauty of that is it doesn't make the conceptual distinctions between mentoring, directive coaching, and non-directive coaching as actually so different as to not allow us to see it as a continuum. Because I can be working and you can be working with somebody here, and as you're working with him, you can be thinking, do you know what I need to do? I need to be going down here, with a view to bringing it back here. Yeah? Or you can be mentoring somebody, and I run programs on advanced mentorship here, but there is non-directive coaching as part of that program. Because a good person who's helping somebody will be moving in different places according to the needs of the person in front of you. Yeah? So, coaching directively and non-directively. Directive coaching being, I would say, get you to think about this as being synonymous with mentoring. The other thing I quite like about this, it solves the problem of sports coaches. Yeah? You know the stuff when you're doing coaching, you only see coaching as that, and then you think, so how can I reconcile that with the notion of a sports coach? So if I'm coaching somebody to be a better diver, I don't ask them loads of questions about how they'd like to put their feet, what angle they'd like their body to be at. I actually say, I know better, do it like this. Yeah? And in any sporting sphere, the guys, male or female, with the word coach on their back are directive coaches. Yeah? They're not non-directive coaches. Yeah? So it solves that particular problem, this, of actually the sports coach versus the other coach. So that's something I just put in your mind, in that I'm going to be talking about solution-focused coaching this morning, solution-focused non-directive coaching, and solution-focused directive coaching, which is why I put on that second slide, coaching mentoring. Okay. So at one level, a coach is somebody who guides somebody through a process, either directively or non-directively. It's the guide bit and it's the process bit. Just an interesting thought that. Okay. Here we go in terms of problem-focused or solution-focused. It's all about how much time you spend with that person in the past or how much time you spend with them in the future. So if you're working with somebody in a problem-focused way, or if an organisational culture deals with stuff in a problem-focused way, the assumption is the deepening understanding of the problem raises awareness and insights about where the solution lies. So lots of the approaches to coaching, lots of the approaches to counselling are about let's unpick all of this stuff, because in so doing we will get some insights into how to move forward. So most of the talk will be problem talk and a little bit of that solution talk. In solution-focused coaching, most of the talk is solution-focused, is solution talk, and very little is problem talk. And that is the distinction and the difference. Yeah? And is in a one-to-one coaching session and organisationally, culturally, that's why I asked you those questions at the beginning.
Could you ask a question?
Yeah.
Sorry, were you going to take questions? In the midst of or
in the midst of?
Oh, okay.
Yeah, is that right?
Yeah.
Go for it.
I was just going to. One of the challenges I've found is that people get very. You can spend too much time on the problem, and that then can drag the individual down and make it more woe is me. So it's that how to get the movement,
which is where we're going today.
Excellent.
Yes. The technique I'm going to talk you through today is a limited amount of problem talk, and in fact when they talk about the problem I'm probably not even listening. Isn't that dreadful? Giving signals that I'm listening, but I'm not the slightest bit interested, but I'm interested in the solution. Anyway, so the focus is on the solutions are more likely to help us quickly make a difference. And that's exactly what Julie said, that's more likely to get us woe is me. But I'm not rubbishing that, it's saying the two ends of the spectrum, because you can work in the middle. Yeah? And that's one of the messages, which let's not polarise things of this or this. If we think of things as continuums, we can get sometimes more traction. You probably spotted these guys in the corner of the first slide and wonder what the hell has he got Indians on there for? Did you read that? Isn't that interesting? That's solution focused. That is solution. So hold that in your mind. That's why I put that image there, because sometimes if you're a visual person, you keep coming back to that and go, I know, it's the bloody Indians, that's what it's about. Yeah. What we do in the West is we sit down, and you'll sit down in your organisation and discuss strategy, pull all the problem into parts, we do all of that. If you really sat down and got clarity about the solution, about what good hunting is, about what good business is, about what success is, does everybody got it and buy into it, then why can't you just go out the door and do it? Just an interesting grammar difference in grammar at the time. Different articulation of solution-focused coaching. I particularly like that last sentence there. If we can't describe a solution, it's possible there isn't a problem. How many times do we work with people, individuals, groups, and they're talking all about the problem, but they haven't got the slightest idea of the solution? Because the problem is we can't get to the solution, surely. But if we haven't got a sense of the solution, maybe the problem's not quite as big. There's one of the reasons I got into solution-focused coaching is because I've been coaching for years and years and years and years and several models, mostly like most people, the grow model, which is a bit tired and boring, I think. I got into solution-focused coaching by going on the course, as you often do, and what particularly appealed to me was how it impacted on me personally, which is why I'm going to do the practical thing I want to do with you, and also, because I've got a bit of an academic background, I like to know there's some evidence behind it. I can't help myself. It's there in my DNA. And there is lots. There is lots. The interesting thing this also does here is, if you want to Google solution-focused coaching, Google it, you'll find it. But you can also Google brief therapy, because it's the same thing. It's just one is in a different sector. The health sector tend to call it brief therapy. Other sectors tend to call it solution-focused coaching. And the same technique that I'm going to work with you this morning on is used a lot in terms of mental health, school behaviour problems, anger management, all sorts of things, right? Because in essence is, actually let's not spend too much time on the problem, actually let's imagine what we want in terms of the future and get it right and work towards it. So it's a paradigm difference. Yeah, so you can call it solution-focused coaching, you can call it brief therapy. It's literally brief because it takes a shorter amount of time. This is for people who like this sort of thing. I do, so we've got that slide. I feel comfortable with some numbers and some research behind it. And there's some things that, if those sort of things you find valuable on your slides, when you get them, you can, deep dive into it. But it is well established and well, how can I put it? It's well rooted in evidence. Applications we'll look at later, but three just to talk to you briefly about is it's used in Walker's snack foods, it's used in as an approach for leadership coaching, and it's used in Marks and Spencer's as the underpinning framework for things that they do. Yeah? So they've moved a long time from the grow model, which again is a bit tired, a bit old, a bit 1950s. Offending people in here, but okay. Marks and Spencer's have a management program called Managing Pressure, which includes the solution-focused approach. So we can, even without knowing what it is, we can imagine, because it's going to be, well, what is a world like when there's no pressure? Let's describe it. What's people's experience? How are people going to be feeling? How are they going to be performing differently? Right, what do we need to do to get there? Not, let's all sit round and talk about how pressured everything is. Yeah? So it's a move, it's a paradigm shift and a cultural shift in the organisation to move in that sort of way. Here we have the cell, which use solution-focused coaching to train managers in higher education colleges, police force and budding entrepreneurs. It's part of their underpinning framework, really, for their leadership, to be solution-focused rather than problem-focused. A little bit more about Walker's snack foods. It's quite interesting because there's a little bit of text there about how you'd embed that in an organisation, not just one person going on the course. But lots of courses, 24 participants at a time, and the programme is supported by every member of the executive team who attended the training first. Yeah? That's how you get something culturally in an organisation, isn't it? By doing that. And then it moved to PepsiCo. So it's an approach that's got academic underpinning, strong resonances in different sectors, and an industry sector set of applications. Okay. So I'm going to pause at that point because we finished the first little bit, second little bit maybe. Anything immediately comes to mind anybody wants to talk about?
Sorry.
Yeah.
Just curious about, and you mentioned a couple of times, the
Yeah.
I like it.
Okay, fine.
Fine. I put myself out there. I like it
No.
because particularly
Being
developing
deliberate.
manager skill sets.
Yeah.
Easy
Okay.
to remember. Easy
Yeah.
to get your head around.
Yeah.
So I don't necessarily, if you're going down this route, then I'm
Yeah.
curious to get some awareness and insight into how grow might actually be different to solution. Because in my mind, I'm thinking grow's quite solution focused.
Okay.
So
Okay.
just want to explore that.
Okay.
further.
That's fine.
Yeah.
Good. 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 Yeah. Yeah. Sorry, there's a lady. Yeah.
I was just interested in the walkers approach. When was that?
Oh,
Roughly?
10 years ago, something like that. When it all
And
started.
any update on
I
what's
haven't
happening
because I'm
now?
not. I don't know. No.
So
Is
curious how successful it was.
Was yeah.
Yeah.
We can sort of follow that through.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Any other thoughts?
And is it similar in a way to the positive kind of coaching, continue and begin?
I don't know that. Tell me about continuing begin.
So continue and begin was something that we brought in one of my previous organisations, which was when we went from the generic mystery shopping style report,
Yeah.
where we just presented somebody with a basic report that they argued was because it was a bad time or whatever the issue might have been.
Yeah.
So we brought in a positive coaching model called Continue and Begin,
Right.
which was based on video mystery shopping and
Okay.
getting the individual to watch back, but focusing on the positives, not allowing them to dwell on any negatives.
Okay. Well, in that respect, it is.
Right.
In that respect, it is. Yeah. Yeah.
And then supposing for me, just picking up on that point where we kind of engage with people in a world where they're essentially visualising a positive outcome.
Yeah.
At what point does hopeless optimism kick in?
Okay. Yeah. Sometimes it does kick in. Sometimes it does kick in. Yeah. You just have to be. When I'm thinking, when you're working with individual, you just have to be aware of that as a potential.
It then picks up around risk management
Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
working
Yeah,
out
yeah.
those mitigation
Yeah.
strategies to get to that idealised
Yeah.
outcome, isn't
Yeah.
it?
Yeah. But it's never for me been a reason for not doing something. I'll talk later at the end about applications of. I'm calling it is solution focused coaching. It is also brief therapy. It's also a facilitation technique with a group of people. All right. So there's a team. I'm going over ground. I'm going over later. There's a team. We've got a problem. Okay. All we just need is that articulation. We don't need to go into it. We don't want to know the whys and wherefores of it. Actually, that is not helpful. What we need to do is get the strongest articulation possible from that group about what not only good but excellent looks like. And not just quickly, absolutely deep as we can get. Yeah? And then we work, and you'll see the way to work towards that. Yeah? So I've certainly worked with senior leadership teams using it as a facilitation technique. Yeah? You can use it as self-coaching, and in a sense you're going to be doing that today. I'm just going to be guiding you through the process. Yeah? Okay. Is that okay to move on a bit? Okay. So we're going to park that because we need to just think a little bit about learning, and it's also a way of giving you something to do, which I think you'll find helpful if you haven't done already, which is there are interactions between coaching, whether it's directed coaching and non-directed coaching, and all the other things we talked about in a sense, and people's learning styles. Yeah? And the learning styles tool that I'm going to use with you this morning is the Honey and Mumford one, and you're not going to have the whole battery of things. You're going to have a very short and sweet, but it works-ish. There's a little questionnaire on the bottom here, so if you'd like to have a look at that. So what you've got is you've got 6 rows, and what you do is you read the statements in the row, and the one of those statements that's the most like you put a 4 next to. The one of those that's the very least like you put a 1 next to, and you distribute the 2 and 3 accordingly. Yeah? So you're doing a bit of reflective thinking about yourself and these comments, and once you've gone across each of the rows, then you do a total in the columns. Yeah, so if you just like to do that. And as you total the as you do the totals in the columns, some people will get a sort of flat profile of numbers. The numbers will be pretty similar. Other people will get a sort of spikiness where one column will be much higher and another column will be much lower. It will vary because thankfully we're all different. As you can imagine, with most assessment type tools like this, psychometric tools like this, that the actual fully blown version of it is very long. This is a distillation, but it works for the purposes that we're using it, and I use it in training in this sort of work. Okay, is everybody broadly, I'm reading the room, okay. So, the 4 learning styles, and what they mean, are described as pragmatist, reflector, theorist and activist. So if you have a very high number here and a very low number there, you are more comfortable being a pragmatist than you are being a theorist, etc., etc. I don't need to overrate that. Now what that means in a we'll play in a moment. Okay. So what are the broad differences between them? The broad differences between them are those. So your learning priorities, your learning attack, as it were, on a situation would be, if you've got quite a high profile number for one of those learning styles, would be particularly magnified. How can I think about this? Sorry, can I have a think about this? Can I have a go at doing it now? Why does this work like this? And how does this work in the real world? That's a particular sort of way of describing that. Okay, and that's another way in words of capturing the distinctions between them. In terms of riding a bicycle, the activist will leap on, have a go, and want to learn as they go. The reflector will watch others, try and evaluate, try and look at how to do it, and then do it. theorist reads the manuals, knows the theory, but might never try it. The pragmatist takes advice, practical tips, and a helping hand. Yeah? I suppose the other one will be an IKEA wardrobe. And then we've got some of the force and strengths and some weaknesses in relation to that. Are there particularly strong activists in the room?
How do you define a strong activist?
So on the profile you're going to have quite a high number. You're going to have around 20, something like that, 16, 20. 16, 20, yeah. High reflectors. Okay. High theorists. Yeah. High pragmatists. Yeah. Okay. So there is a difference, so there always is a difference. If you're coaching and mentoring, directively coaching or non-directively coaching, perhaps it matters a little that you're aware of yourself and where you come from, the learning style, and perhaps you need to be a little bit aware of the person you're working with, because perhaps it makes a difference. Perhaps it makes a difference. Right? If you're a strong activist coaching somebody in this room who's a very strong reflector, it might feel a bit clunky to start with. Yeah? If you're a strong reflector coaching somebody who's a strong activist, you'll drive them mad. They want to be getting going, they don't want to be reflecting. So just put that in your mind, and then, this is all on the slides, the detail you can look at later, is just some thinking about that. Non-directively coaching an activist is quite tough, because they want you to just get going, they want to get going. Tell me what I need to do and I'll sort it. Okay. They're prepared to be mentored, prepared to be directively coached, but actually they don't want any navel gazing stuff. A reflector, they like it, they love non-directive coaching. It really, really works for them. Theorists have got to really understand what you're trying to do here, what this is all about, how's this supposed to work. And the pragmatists have got to be absolutely clear, this is going to help me in the workplace and it's really, really relevant. And this is the detail of the learning style of the coachee. So what's this just putting into the arena is all the stuff that we're talking about, coaching models, be it grow, be it solution focused, be it whatever, to be most beneficial needs a level of sophistication, of understanding from the point of view of the coach about how they come at learning in relation to how the person may be coming at learning as a coachee. And you wouldn't sort of give them that questionnaire to establish that. What you'd be doing is listening to cues and clues all the time to thinking, okay, I think I've got why this isn't working. I think I've got why this isn't working.
Have you got any advice for when you're doing team coaching?
Right.
Because you'll have possibly all of those different
Yeah.
styles.
The only advice you can ever give people and you'd ever take on board in relation to that is you've got to appeal to those four. Yeah, you've got to appeal to those four. This presentation appeals, I hope, to all four. All right? There's, yeah, I skipped over it because it wasn't not something for now, but all the theoretical underpinning of all that's there for the theorists who want it. Yeah, you can fix it. Right? The activists probably got this bothered about that. Just want to get going. Pragmatists, if it works, it works. I don't care what the theoretical underpinning is. If it works, it works. Yeah? So, that's the only advice you can take. Yeah? It's like when I do lots of work on training trainers. It's the same thing. We do exactly the same thing. You've got to appeal for the likelihood that you've got a representative group in the room. Yeah? And what I would always do is do this as an exercise anyway, as a bit of fun, and then we can reflect as trainers on that. Yeah? So it's actually easy for me because I'll know within an hour what's in the room. But when they're doing their training, unless they do that, they'll have to pick up cues and things like that. But it is worth thinking about, and it has got a relationship between directive and non-directive coaching. Some people cannot be coached, will not be coached. Yeah? Some people you want to get galvanised through very strong directive coaching and mentoring, and they will want to spend a lot of time. Yeah? I worked with the senior leadership team years ago, which is why one of the reasons I knew about this and had experience of it, but it was a really strong experience for me, which I was doing this work with on a leadership program, and a woman came to see me and said, "Do you know this has changed my life?" And I said, "Oh, come on, that's a little bit." And she said, "I've got a team that always, when we have meetings, always agree to everything but go away and do nothing." Yeah. Now I've got a sense of I'm an activist, they're all theorists and reflectors. What I do now is I go and talk to them about in advance what we're going to discuss in the meeting to give them time to process. Then they come, then we do it, then they follow through. Yeah? Because she was a strong activist and she just went and thought it were doing it. But they couldn't. Okay, so there might be some awareness there that might lead to some action that might have some positive benefit. Let's have a go at solution-focused coaching. Okay, I'm going to take you through the process of solution-focused coaching, so you've got to do two things simultaneously. One, work with me as I'm going to be coaching you, and secondly, thinking, I'm getting a sense of this is what solution-focused coaching is. Yeah? So you're thinking in two things at once. So the first thing that happens in solution-focused coaching is there's always a presenting problem, challenge, issue that you need to resolve. So if you could just think if there's something, hopefully there is, so you can go on this journey, the rest of us, in terms of a problem, challenge, issue you need to resolve. There's a little space on there if you want to. These are not being taken in the mark or looked at. You can just put something there so you can anchor it. Right? It can be professional, domestic, relational, it can be whatever you want it to be. But the more authentic it is, the more you will understand the process. So what I would do if I'm coaching somebody one-to-one and they are speaking to me, you don't have to, but they are speaking to me, is we talk just a little bit about that, but a tiny bit about that. Okay? My role would be just to acknowledge that I can see it's really real for them and that must be difficult, and it's just an acknowledgement. But I must not go into that problem with them. My job as a coach is to, I was just taking you there. My job as a coach now is to take them very quickly to get their brain, their minds to be focusing on, which is I'm asking you to do, what's the ideal outcome for you of that thing you've got to resolve? What's the preferred future? What's your best hope? Where do you want to get to? Yeah. So you wake up tomorrow morning and it has all been resolved. It's all gone away. And one way I'd work with clients on that is I talk about, so how are you going to be thinking differently? What are you going to be thinking? What are other people going to be thinking? See those columns on that, those boxes, just if you want to use them. How are you going to be feeling? What are other people going to be feeling? What are you going to be doing in this preferred future, in this ideal outcome? Sometimes it's called the future perfect. What are you going to be thinking? What are you going to be feeling? What are you going to be doing? What are you going to be saying? What are you going to be telling other people? What are you going to be saying at home around the dinner table? What are you going to be saying to your work colleague? What are you going to be saying to your direct reports? What are you going to be saying to your boss? What are you going to be... And of course, unlike what you're doing it internally, they would be doing it externally. And if I was thinking they haven't got a strong picture here, I'd keep going, and I'd keep going, and I'd keep going. Yeah, because I've got to get a strong picture. Or they've got to get a strong picture. Problem with my work team. Okay, I'm the team leader, but problem with my work team is this, is that, is the other. Okay, heard a bit of that. Right, let's say there isn't a problem anymore. What's it going to be look like? That team working well, what's it going to look like? What are they going to be talking to each other about? What did you say? All of that, over, deepening. One of the things in solution-focused coaching, key technique is scaling. Right? Scaling to 10. It's always used in solution-focused coaching, it's always used in brief therapy. And what we say at this point is, you've just described in your head a 10, or you told me and in your head it's a 10. What we're going to do during this small piece of coaching is we're going to try and see how we can get you to a 9. Right, so you'd always bring it down a tad. Right, just lower the expectation a little so we can get a little bit of understanding that this isn't going to be all that easy, so we just take it down a tad. Yeah, it's just one of the parts of the process. And then you say to the person, so on that scale of 0 to 10, where are you now in relation to that model, that picture that you've got in your head? You've described in your head a 10, I'm saying we're going to get to 9, where are you now? And I've used this loads of times, I've never had anybody say 0, but I have had people who say half. Yeah? And you do this in front of them with paper, a big bit of paper so they can see, and suddenly something happens, which is you get a sense of, well, maybe it's not as far away as I thought it was. Yeah? Because it's not, I've just described a 10 and I'm at 0 and it's a long way. The reality is, you've said to yourselves, the client has said to me, well, actually it's probably 4.5 if I'm honest. Okay. So what we've got to do, therefore, is to get from 4.5 to 10, we've got to spend a little bit of time looking at what's getting in the way. Yeah? What are the blocks and barriers that are preventing us getting to 9? What are your blocks and barriers preventing you from getting to 9? And there's a structure to this, and I'll follow the structure with you, which is the first thing that is, what is it about other people? In what way are other people causing you to have difficulty in resolving this, having difficulty in moving from whatever number you gave to the 9? There are other people in relation to this. And they're just a few prompts there, power games, politics, lack of skills. What's going on that's to do with other people that's preventing you from moving forward? Some of you might have spotted on the back there's a little matrix you could use to do, but that's just... And of course they'd be talking to me about that. They'd be talking to me about that. And I'd be prompting them to think a bit deeper if they think, well, no. Having talked about other people, I then move on to the situation. So what is it in the situation, if there's anything in the situation that's causing the problem, all right? Not enough money might be one, okay? Might. Timescale. Stuff that's not particularly to do with the other people, but it's the situation.
Is that where there's an element of things out of their control?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. But they need to say it.
Yeah.
They need to articulate it. Yeah. They need to recognise it. Yeah. And then the third place you go, which is the only place to go to do the real work, is, oh, what about you? What way are you acting as a block and a barrier in this situation? Yeah? So I'd ask you to think about that in relation to your piece of work that you're doing, your challenge. What way are you blocking that in any way? And there's a few tips and bobs there for you to get hold of. Of course, the client I was working with, you would do that too, from taking you to a training, very quick training. Now, it's really important you do that in that order, because actually the only place we now need to focus on is self, because that's the only thing they can do anything about from a coaching point of view, and the only thing you can help them with. Other people are other people, yeah, to an extent out of their control. The situation is out of their control. But if you start with self, they will quickly go to, but it's other people. But it's because we haven't got enough money. So you've got to clear that out first. But actually, when they're doing that, I'm not listening much. Okay? Being honest, I'm not listening that much. I've just got to get them to clear all that away. Because what we do need to do is to do that. So what is it that's going on that we can maybe do some work together on that's blocking and acting as a barrier to getting their ideal future? Yeah? So if it is a team dysfunction problem, you're a team leader, yes, of course there'll be other people, of course there'll be the situation, of course it's the timing of the meeting, of course it's everything else. But let's move all of that out of the way and say, well, what about you? Yeah? And that's when you get the frozen moment. You go, it is something to do with me. Yeah? But that's where you can be most help. So I'm hoping you've gone there, you've got a sense of that. That is the big place to go. So you just magnify that. That's the place to go. It's not just those things. It's stuff about you in relation to what you want to resolve and your picture of what the ideal future looks like. And then that's where you go in terms of your next stage of your coaching. You don't have to use these next questions. I'm just choosing to use them because they're questions you can use if you're working with somebody and you say, well, this is just what I want you to go through privately in your own head. We don't need to hear you talk, because actually to do coaching you don't need to hear anybody talk. It's what they process. So the power of the question is its impact on the processing. So here for you, so you've got them, are just some questions. Take yourself through those questions, having got to that point. I was just finishing that, sorry. What's critical for you to resolve and get sorted? And that's in relation to yourself, in relation to that challenge yourself. Having thought about it, what's critical for you to resolve and get sorted? What impact is not getting this sorted having on your life? What do you know you've been doing that's prevented you from resolving this? What do you know you've been doing that's prevented you from resolving this? The behaviours and the emotions and the strategies. what's this, what you've been doing, what's the cost been in the past? What's the cost being in the present? What will it be in the future if you don't get it sorted? And then what decision are you making in yourself right now? Okay, now they're very powerful coaching questions that can have a significant impact on people without them even articulating to you their answers. Where do you go from there? You go work with them and say, so what are the ways forward? What commitments are we going to do to act, to do something before we next meet? Yeah? So taking all that on board, what are we going to do? What's the one thing, what are the two things that have come out of that analysis that you're going to do that's going to lead to the ideal outcome? And the person makes the choice. Yeah? So you can make a choice on that so far of the actions and commitments. Okay, then you're only really half done because there's another bit which says, okay, what resources have we got available? Resources are there available to help in the situation? Resources in other people, resources in the situation, and resources in yourself. Yeah? And there's a line there to actions as well. Well, okay, I know somebody, she's really good at this, she could help me. I'm going to go to her because I'm going to get her to mentor me about this because I know she could really help me draw on that resource. Okay? So you're getting two inputs to the ways forward gradually to move towards that. A, by looking at blocks and barriers, particularly the self, and B, by looking at resources, and again, particularly the self. Yeah? Because often people feel when they're in the grips of a problem they've got to solve, they've got no resource. Can't solve it, they've got no resource. It's your job to help them to see they have got some resource. And how that could be. Now, another thing you do at this point, is when you talk about resources, is you go back to there. And you say, it's very interesting when we said how far were you towards 9, you didn't say 0. You said 4. So let's just talk a little bit about that. How come it's 4? Well, this works well, that works well, that works okay. Brilliant. So why do they work so well? Yeah? Well, it's because of this. Okay, their resources, could you use those to move to 6? Because that's where we're going to try and move before I see you next. Yeah? So you're not expecting them to get from 4.5 to 9. You're going to say, well, let's say 6.5. Let's say 6.5. Yeah? Because we'll come back in a couple of weeks. We'll talk about how you're doing, where we've got to, and then we'll go on our journey, get us to 9 as soon as we can. Yeah? Can you see how it's solution focused all the time? It's pulling in that direction of the solution and stepping it in terms of manageability as steered by the person you're working with. Yeah? So that's really the full model. Yeah? Problem, acknowledge, actually dwelling into it's not going to very far. Problem talk, your solution talk, loads of solution talk. Go back to blocks and barriers. What's getting you in the way of that? Particularly in relation to self. What does that lead to in terms of ways forward and actions and commitments? And likewise, the resources. Okay? And and using scaling all the time, and that is the solution-focused coaching model. Yeah? Now, you can now see how you could work with a team of people trying to solve a problem with a team. It's exactly the same. Just need a facilitator to facilitate the process as I facilitated your individual thinking about that. Yeah? So they go back the second time and you've actually got to 6.5. That's pretty amazing. So what's been going on here? What's the stuff that they're feeling has got them to 6.5? So I'm having some extra stickers. Okay. So it can be quite brief, as in brief therapy. You know, you don't have to go to a counsellor, a therapist, for 4 years talking about the problem and unpacking it, and I'm not dissing that school of thought at all. I'm saying you don't have to. The brief therapy movement, the solution-focused coaching movement says actually you can move it quite quickly if you do some really clear, focused work and get them to see what they need to do in order to move. And that, you'll have that slide in your handout. That's, I think there's a word for it, I can't think of the word for it. Putting something all on page, it's schematic or something like that. Putting it all in place, yeah, what the process is. Which if I gave you that, would make head and tail to you. But you can got it now, yeah? You've just been through it, been through the process, and that just captures it all, yeah? If we now look at solution-focused, non-directive, solution-focused mentorship. That's directive, sorry. Solution-focused mentorship, solution-focused non-directive coaching. You can see at the top there the stages in the coaching model. What's the problem? What's the vision, the best hopes? What are the blocks and barriers? What are the resources? What are the actions and the way forward? And you can see how that is different according to the two ends of the spectrum, directive and non-directive. So you can still coach in a very directive, mentor in a very directive way using a solution-focused approach. Yeah? Because in that case, you'd be identifying the area which the person needs to work on. You'd be articulating for them what success needs to look like and what they've got to do, what good's like, if you like. You'd be identifying what you see as the blocks and barriers. You'd be identifying what the resources are, and you'd be identifying what the next steps are. That's way at that end of the spectrum. I've just taken you through the process at the other end of the spectrum. Yeah, but there's a middle ground. And my experience of working with people is that you would exploit the fact that it's a continuum. So I might start with somebody here, because if I need to, as a line manager, start with somebody here, I need to identify very clearly what the problem is. And I need to identify very clearly what success needs to look like. Having done that, I might want to go in a very directive, non-directive way towards blocks and barriers. Yeah? If they could work with me in that sort of way. So I can navigate what I'm doing across that framework. Yeah? So am I being a coach, am I being a mentor? I'm being all sorts of things. I'm helping that person to perform better. Go back. Slides. Yeah? So what I do in the training that I run about mentorship is getting to the place where they see mentorship as being finding the right route for the right people to achieve the right outcome. But of course, factored through that is learning style. Yeah? If I'm dealing with somebody who is an activist and a pragmatist and very low on the reflective bit, I might be wasting quite a lot of time up here. I might want to go into the middle and say, well, you give some, I'll give some. Yeah? Because actually, whilst that's going to have far more impacts than non-directive, in the time available, and it's going to be really quite tough. Okay. So that is in a that's solution focused coaching, mentoring. That's the approach. Just check. Right, this is the next slide without looking. So anything immediately about that? Can we go to the next one?
I really love the whole concept. It's very much around future pacing.
Yes, future pacing. Yes, yes.
What I found working in organisations is that speaking to individuals at any level, the application of this is really powerful.
Yeah.
But overall, what holds it back is this underlying sort of parent-child dynamic
Yeah.
within the workplace.
Yes.
How do you challenge that?
Yeah. The first challenge is to recognise that it is a likely thing that's going on or will go on, at least on the table, is my experience of that. In a counselling context, you call it transference, you should probably know, where there's stuff going on in terms of, they often call it the ghost in the process. There's a ghost in all of these processes, you know, which is the relationship thing and what people think and expect from different people. That's going to be less of a problem there, but it becomes more of a problem there. Yeah? And if you're working there and they're trying to pull you there. So I haven't got any tips other than you have to sort of, if you're establishing this in as part of a culture in an organisation, as a group of adults, you just have to put it on the table and have an alertness to it. It's the only contribution I can make. Okay, going on. So there is there's a clinic source because I need them. A theorist, so I need them. About typology of mentoring, which says there's 4 different components to being an effective mentor: advocacy, supported solution finding, direction setting, and effective contacts. Quite a nice model to hang stuff on. But you can see there we have non-directive coaching and directive coaching sat inside the concept of mentoring. Yeah, because you're going to be doing different things at different times. Mentoring is more about the power relationship sometimes between two people. So I've not a lot of time to dwell on that, but that's there. It's quite helpful. We're going on to the penultimate segment now. I do quite a bit of coaching of individuals and use a psychometric as part of it, solution-focused coaching, which is about mental toughness. So basically, they fill in the questionnaire, they get a report, it gives them a profile around their mental toughness. And mental toughness has got a lot, as a concept, has got a lot of theoretical and strong underpinning to it. And it's all of those things. Yeah, control, commitment, challenge, confidence. It's resilience plus positivity. It's all of that. Yeah. So when we're looking at what are the blocks and barriers and resources, we can then draw on that. Yeah. And this will be for leaders. Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Quick question. What is the tool?
The tool's called it's Mental Toughness MT48, and AQR is the organisation.
AQR.
AQR.
Thank you.
I've got details on here on my website, you can go on it and all the details there. I've used several, but I find this really, really powerful.
For leaders, you said.
For leaders.
Yeah.
It's powerful for everybody, but it's particularly powerful for leaders, because, okay, they've got problem X. We look at what they want in an ideal world, what would make their life perfect, what it would be like if, there's something in brief therapy and that's called the miracle question. And the miracle question is, if a miracle happened overnight, I don't use that, it's a bit twee for me, but so we get that, and then we go, well, so what are the blocks and barriers? And we go through all the stuff, and then we go, what about you? Okay. We can pull this out, and we can have a look at, well, isn't it interesting that you scored yourself quite low on risk orientation? Is that a block? Is that a problem? But also, you've got very high on confidence in your own abilities. That's a tremendous resource we could use here. Do you see what I mean? So you can use the psychometric inside, and I would advocate that, so it's a very good one, but you'll have other tools. I'm giving you the sense that you can use tools within that. Yeah? I also use the Margison McCann team management system. I don't know whether you know that, whereby you've got a work team and they all fill in a questionnaire, and it basically determines, or they reveal through it, what their priorities are in terms of these different team roles. Yeah. So there's one for a particular team. So there's some pretty low interest in that team on stuff like producing, inspecting, maintaining, advising. The question is that right, the right balance for that team doing that right job? That might be an interesting perspective on what the blocks and barriers might be, but also what the resources might be. Yeah? So that's how you can factor in something with a team. So that's how why I was using that. The first one was with an individual, that's with a team. Yeah? But you'd set it still within the solution-focused model. And you wouldn't go anywhere near that unless they were absolutely clear of what perfection and really good, strong team working means for them. And you might spend half an hour on that. Not just a few clean comments like we all get on well together. And it's got to be really good. There is a very strong team, there's a very strong tool that norms it all and everything, but you can just do it on something as simple as that, which I have done. How strong do you feel on a scale of 0 to 10 when having to take work that involves those things? And it just sort of quickly reveals a sense that nobody really likes that aspect, so is that a problem for us? Just talk about Yodel. Yodel's a massive big organisation, you may know. There's something about Yodel. Huge. And they've got a very strong coaching culture that's been hardwired into the organisation. They don't yet use a solution-focused model. Say yet, work in progress. But it's all hardwired into the organisation. I use these slides just to open your minds to I rather like that. They say in their organisation there's coaching for performance, coaching for development, coaching for change, and coaching for issue resolution. That's really strong. Yeah, really strong. And of course what we know now is that could be, any of those top lines could be directive or non-directive coaching, depending on if there's a real performance issue, it might need some pretty strong directive coaching. Yeah, who knows? Yeah. They use Grow mostly, yeah, but it's work in progress. We're trying to move that along a bit. But it's a really good example for me where coaching is being hardwired into the organisation. Yeah. And Lynn, the HR director of Yodel, doesn't mind me sharing that with you, her model that she's hardwired into the organisation. Okay. I've got a course, a short course on advanced workplace mentoring, which embodies all of these things, yeah, that you may be interested in. There's information there. I also, this information on the front here, I've also got an accredited course in training and facilitation, but my reason for putting that on there is and that embodies solution focused. Yeah? So somebody comes to you, wants a facilitation job done, we need to solve this problem, it's always solution focused. So it broadly uses this model. Yeah? And it could be a room full of 50 people, but it uses this model. Yeah? I was hoping you could see that, I wasn't too sure about the slide, but you can see that. Somebody has wrapped systematized solution-focused coaching in a particular way so that people can follow it almost like paint by numbers. Yeah, it's not difficult to do. I think you saw how you could do what I did. But that's a paint by numbers approach, and it's called the OSCAR framework. You can see outcome scaling, know-how, resources, affirmation, action, and review. Yeah. So you can quite see how a quick training could actually induct people into that, and they can sit down with one another and go through the Oscar model. Yeah, so that's just an example of, you might come across that in the context of reading about solution focused coaching. It might say Oscar, and that is Oscar. Yeah, it's not yeah, it's really nice actually. It's not as detailed. It doesn't go into the detail that I go in, and I don't think personally it's as powerful, but it does frame it in terms of that. It uses scaling because that's a critical part of solution focused coaching, and it does frame it in terms of positivity and solution focused. Yeah.
So that can stick in your head in the same way that I agree with you
Grow.
about grow. That is when people
Yeah.
start to coach.
You need a
it's
framework.
quite in your head.
Yeah.
Although you've got notes, you don't want to be looking down or I need to ask questions
No,
before
no,
now.
no.
You know.
And that is
So
one of the
that's
beauties
quite
of
good.
grow. But that's what when we were having that conversation, I was thinking, I don't want to bring this out now, but there is an equivalent. Yeah.
There's also Oscar with the C,
Yeah.
so the know-how and resources, instead of that is choices and options.
Okay, choices and options,
So-
right, yes, I have
so-
seen that somewhere, yeah.
But I use Oscar, but I just
Yeah.
use the C and the K,
Okay,
because I
yeah.
think it enriches it more.
It enriches it more, yeah.
What was the C again?
Choices and options.
Choices and options, yeah. Yeah, I've seen that too, yeah.
And that's what we use because we use coaching style of leadership at the county council, so we upskill our managers in the coaching style of leadership, and
Right.
I introduce them to the Oscar model because I think it's easier for them, particularly the review element, because you can pick that up at the next one-to-one or
Yeah.
next session
Yeah.
that you have with them.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. But for you, what I would always do is do that at the, personally I do that at the end as a way of saying, well, here's a sort of takeaway. I think it's quite important they get the, I don't know, get an in-depth feel for the full, the full thing. Personally. Okay. That's a YouTube hyperlink to one of those, I don't know what they're called, it's where somebody's drawing, like a cartoony thing. It's really good. It's just like, it just shows it. Yeah, it's really, really good. Again, it'll be on the slides. I didn't think we'd have, and we haven't got time to show it, but it's something you can look at in the, look at yourself, and you can use on your own training as well. Right? It's a really good way of, what I often do is, like if it's a 2-day training, it isn't usually, it's usually one, but if it's 2, so go and watch that tonight and come back, because it just anchors stuff you've been doing in a very light-hearted and simple. Okay. Going forward, the question is for you, I guess. How are you going to go forward with this? Because all of these things like this, aren't they? They're hopefully quite interesting. Hopefully quite a useful way of spending an hour and a half. But it's about awareness, action, impacts, what you're going to do, if anything. It's the way forward. Bring these guys back again, because actually is there stuff that you personally or you and others need to sit down and get a very strong envisaged picture of? Yeah. Is that a cultural shift you need? What is it? Yeah. We can return to the 3 questions, can't we? Is your organisation problem focused, solution focused? You've got that graph you've seen now. It's about the talk, isn't it? Is it mostly problem talk with a little bit of solution talk, or is it mostly solutions talk with a little bit of problem talk? And there's something there about the how do you know, because you pick that up. Yeah, and does it matter? I'll leave that to you. But it's a question worth. It's the natural follow through. It's worth important to think about. Okay. I'm going to end with a going forward for me, which is that a thing that said social entrepreneur. In 6 months ago, 2 of us, myself and another guy, sat down like a group of of the Indians and envisaged something. The presenting problem was men like us who find themselves having lots of difficult challenges and find themselves in circumstances they can't talk to other people about and need to, and both myself and the guy who I had a conversation with had, not from our personal experience, from directly but indirectly known about men who've got themselves in a real mess around that, tragically. And we decided we were going to do something about it, and we got some other men, so there's now 5 or 6 of us, and we sat down and we envisaged something, and we envisaged that, which is now a registered community interest company with a registered trademark called Blood Coach, and we have and are continuing our spare time to work on it in a solution-focused way. So we have a very, very powerful, strong image of what we're doing, and we're now removing blocks and barriers and looking for resources such that we can launch it on International Men's Day on the 19th of November. Yeah, I'd just like to give you a bit of an advert for that, because when it's launched, you can put the hyperlink for free on your intranet, and it's a place that men can go, and it's an electronic platform, so men can go anonymously. It's all of those things. Yeah. But it's interesting that it came about by having a very, very, very strong, which we affirm every time we meet, view of what good hunting's like. Yeah, a view of what good looks like for this, and then it's just a question of removing blocks and barriers. Would it be that simple? But it's just a question of removing blocks and barriers, thinking what resources we need and going, getting them. Yeah? So there's twofold there. That's the link to the beginning. It's also saying when it is launched, you can have it, because it's going, if we've got the resources we need from the places we're seeking them from, nobody will spend, no user will spend a penny on it. But I mention it because it's been generated through a solution-focused model. Yeah? So I think I've done quite well. It's 10 o'clock.
You've done very well.
At a time. Okay, so that's what I'm going to do now. Yeah, so that's me. Thank you very much. I hope it was a productive session for you. Questions? Thoughts?
Hi. Yeah, I have a question, I guess, around the application, because
Yeah.
as a mentor, I can see definitely the benefits of using that approach for an individual. What kind of success, in your experience, have you had in kind of conflict mediation? Because I've got in mind 2 particular individuals within my organisation that are quite senior, that I'm trying to sort of help at the moment. They've got a lot of issues in history, and I don't want to kind of rehash all of that, because we're just not going to ever agree. But what I need them to try and do to make it kind of a team is work better together and focus on the future and kind of what we've been talking about today.
Right.
But that would mean both of them to kind of buy in to that process.
Yeah.
Have you got experience of using it
Well,
that way?
I haven't especially, but all I would do is give back to you the model, which is, and you've already said it yourself, there's no point delving into why these issues are these issues. That's just
no, it's not.
A, right, to exacerbate them, and B, waste everybody's time.
Yeah.
Those 2 individuals need to have a strong sense of what resolution looks like and needs to be like for them.
Yeah.
And until you know that, until they know each other's that, you can't then, how shall I say, engineer a future which they're both going to be satisfied with.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then that's got to be really strong, and it's got to be really worth them working towards. Because they're not going to strip back any blocks and barriers. They're not going to look for any resources if they've got no buy-in to the future, are they? Are they? You know, that would be my approach, would be to actually try and get them to conceive of their best hopes. Best hope, there's ideal future, future perfect, and there's best hopes. You know, that comes down a bit, doesn't it? It's your best hopes. So that's not very useful, because I haven't had any direct experience of it, but it's an application of the model, which is to say, don't even go anywhere else until we've got that.
Yeah.
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 must mean...
You did a great job, Steve.
Yeah.
Okay, does it? I don't know what it means. I was leaving you to finish the sentence. Okay, I've enjoyed it. I hope you have. Thank you.